Hey, what's up guys? capnbozzy here, and this is Mass Effect 3 Multiplayer N7 Academy Part 6. And in this video, we're just going to be here in the menu, and I'm going to be going over the different maps, enemies, and challenge or difficulty types there are. So, of course, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And just going to be going through each of these different sections here just to give you some more information about them. So if you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of experience with the different maps and the other things here, I'll just give you some more insights so that you know what you're going to be getting into, and have an idea of which settings to start with, and what to expect as you're going forward. Okay, so let's get started here with the maps. All right, so of course, when you're in your the quick match or create new match screen, you can choose unknown location, which is just a random map, and that will give you plus 25% XP. So in a lot of rooms that you're going to be in, that's usually what the setting is going to be on. So just be aware of that. That's usually a good thing to go with, since you'll get the extra XP in the beginning. Sometimes if a host wants to specify a particular map to play on, that's definitely not a bad idea, especially if, you're in a party with people that you know and you want to create a specific team build and, play a particular map. If you're, everyone on your team is, say just transferring over to, or transitioning over to gold or platinum for one of the first times, then it's definitely not a bad idea to know what map and enemy you're going to be playing against, so that you can prepare accordingly with your team build. All right, so just very briefly, I'm going to go through each of these different maps. So Firebase Dagger, and it also has a hazard map as well, and that just has just some what is it like? It's just like dusty, has like a dusty atmosphere, so it's a little bit harder to see. It's like a windstorm type thing. But Firebase Dagger, I would say it's like a medium-sized map. As far as its difficulty level, it's definitely, I would say, in the medium to easier levels in the game. And that's really just because it has a very kind of symmetrical layout to it and a lot of cover. In the spawn spot, that's usually a good place to hang out, and really, around there in the main like command center type place with the big window. That's usually, whenever I've played it, that's usually where the team tends to stick around and just cover the three different entryways from there. So that's usually a good strategy. Use the long hallways to your advantage, and also the it's not a staircase, but the drop down from the spawn point. You also have a ammo box right at the spawn point, so that's something that, unfortunately, on Dagger there isn't a lot of ammo, and you kind of gotta run around. There's another ammo box right at the bottom from the spawn point if you go down and then go straight forward. So not towards the command center room, but down towards the lower part of the map. There's a ammo box right on the left side there that you can use if other people get the one right at the spawn point and you have no ammo or grenades there for you. This is one that, depending on where the objectives are, a lot of times if you get a hack that's like near the like the back of the map, it can be kind of difficult. I think there's also like the 4-point objectives. Those can be a little bit difficult. But Dagger, once again, it's one of those maps that you just want to use the long hallways and things to your advantage. Use cover. And I think that's really about it. Firebase Ghost is definitely one of the easiest maps in the game. I would say it's probably up there, definitely within the top 3 or top 5 easiest maps. The reason is it's also a very symmetrical map, and it has a lot of cover, so you can really just stay in one of the different sections. A lot of times there's one particular section in the back of the map. Obviously, it'd be a lot easier to show you this if I had video footage running for each of these, but I don't think it's really necessary because I'm just doing these brief overviews. But when you just stay in the back of the map, they're like right where there's like an ammo crate. If you play it, you'll know what I'm talking about. That's usually one of the best places to stay, and also from the spawn point, if you just go straight up the ramp and go forward into the first little base section there, that's also a pretty decent place to camp out, and especially if you're going to play the hazard type of this map. That's actually one of the hardest levels in the game because the acid rain can make it very difficult because it drains your shields. So of course, with the acid rain version of this map, it's absolutely essential to stay inside. And of course, there are a couple different sections on the outside that do not get hit by the acid rain. So just make sure you learn where those are, because that will make a big difference when you're playing. Because sometimes it just makes sense. If you have to go get ammo, you got to go revive somebody, that you know where those safe spots are, because there's there's cover above you on the top of the map, blocking the rain from coming down. All right, so Giant, this is another one that's one of the easier maps in the game. I would say also within the top 3, top 5 easiest maps. The hazard map of Giant is really no problem at all. It's just it just takes place at night, or kind of like a storm. So it's the same exact map except darker. So there's no health hazard or anything like that. So it's really pretty inconsequential to the gameplay. Giant is another map that's also pretty symmetrical, and you'll notice that all the maps that are really pretty symmetrical and have a lot of cover and also long kind of hallways tend to be the easier types of maps. So Giant is another one that there's really only 2 locations that you're going to be staying in when you play for the most part, and that's right at the spawn point area. You can stay right in that little area. On the right side, of course, from the spawn, there's a wall there, and kind of a long stretch to the next part of the base of the base area, and you can just kind of hang around, going back and forth as you need to between the spawn area and that base area along that side. And I definitely suggest, if you find yourself getting overwhelmed, or especially if you have to solo or something, to just cycle around the map and use that kind of back exit. So there's like a ladder down from the back of the base that's directly straight forward from the spawn point. So if you just go straight from the spawn point all the way through into the base, there will be a ladder that goes down, and then right when you go down there, right against the wall, there will be an ammo crate, and that's something that I typically do if I ever have to get out of there quickly, is I use that back exit, because it gives you a lot of cover, and it's usually safe. Of course, the other area that you're probably going to be in a lot when you're playing on Giant is the area straight on the opposite side. So on the symmetrical opposite side, there's a ramp that goes up to another kind of higher up, a little base camp area with a window, and there's a hack. That's one of the locations of the hacks that's in there, and also when you go down a ramp when you're inside of that room. There's also another ammo crate in there, and inside another small room. So just in that little command center area, that's the other place you want to go, and especially like on wave 11 when you're extracting. That's usually a good place to hang out and just basically cover the entrances of that area, and then exit down the ramp or wherever you need to go when you need to get to the extraction zone. Okay, Reactor. So Reactor is one of the, you could say it's medium small. Definitely not as small as something like Glacier or Firebase White, but it's it's kind of hard to say. But I would say it seems to be a little bit bigger than those two, if they're the smallest in the game. But Reactor is one of those ones that can be deceptively difficult because while it does have a decent amount of cover, it is actually symmetrical. Like I said, it's kind of deceptive in its layout with it, just because there's a lot of open areas, and the parts that do have cover don't really have closed off. They're not really closed off, because really what makes the best cover is having something like a long hallway where you can just use right-hand advantage, or which I haven't gone over yet in this tutorial series, which I'm actually going to go over in the next video, which is going to be on advanced gameplay tactics. But with right-hand advantage, it's basically just using cover so that you're facing basically you're on the left side of cover using soft cover, and your gun is pointing out to the right. And when you're doing that, you can't get hit on your left side. So it provides like the perfect type of soft cover. Anyway, so when you're in the Reactor, and of course in the hazard map of Reactor, you can actually turn on the Reactor, and the doors will close, and anything inside will get incinerated, including teammates. So you got to be careful about that, and yourself. That's something that, to be honest, like the Reactor isn't really important to use. It's not like super strategic or anything to wait until there's enemies inside. It really doesn't do very much damage. It's not gonna like kill a Banshee or a Brute or anything like that. Maybe it will kill some lower level enemies, but for the most part, you don't really need to use it. It's probably more trouble than it's worth, because you press the button, and after a couple seconds, if a teammate doesn't know that the button was pressed and runs in there, just going through the map, then that's a little bit more trouble than it's worth. So just be aware of that. But Reactor overall, I wouldn't say it's one of the harder ones. It's definitely one of the medium difficulty ones. It's not super easy. It's one of those maps that if you have a good team, then you can get through it easily. But it can go to hell pretty damn easily if your team is not equipped appropriately. And there are also some difficult hacks in Reactor that you need to be careful about. So really, you just need to make sure that if you're going to play a Reactor, and of course, once again, if you're going to do random maps, then you don't know. But if you know you're going to play a Reactor, then you definitely want to be bulked up a bit. Have a strong team build, have some have at least one tank in there. It'll make playing through it a lot easier. All right, Glacier. So Glacier is definitely it's got to be the smallest map in the game. A lot of, like I said before, a lot of this is kind of deceptive, but I'm pretty sure Glacier is the smallest in the game. And Glacier without the hazard isn't too bad if you have a tank, like something like a Jug or a Krogan really helps, or of course like a Geth soldier or a Vorcha with Flamer. That will definitely make things a lot easier. And you also want to make sure that you utilize the stair glitch in the game. Well, I don't know if it would be really a glitch, but basically when you're on stairs or ramps, you can't get sync killed. So that's something that, like, if you have a Krogan, you just want to, if you're getting overwhelmed by enemies coming up and down, there's a really long ramp that's in the back of the, kind of like in the back of the map, and there's an ammo crate there. You want to go to that location and basically just stay there if there's a lot of enemies, a lot of bosses that can sync kill you coming up. And if you're tanking with like a Krogan, you will not get sync killed as long as you stay on the ramp area. So you can just stand there and basically just tank away and have no problems with getting sync killed. So that's definitely a strategy I use a lot. I don't know, maybe it's just using the game, exploiting it, but it is what it is. So I definitely recommend using those ramps to your advantage. It's another in this map particular. This isn't one that you're necessarily going to be in one area all the time. I would say the most common area that you're going to be hanging out is probably if you go straight out from where you spawn. There's a little back section that has like a long enclosed hallway. That's probably where you're going to be staying the longest. You just got to make sure that if the enemies are coming in, you're not killing them fast enough that you don't get stuck in there, and you either go out from one of the two entrances. So that's how you got to be careful about. There's a couple hacks on Glacier. Actually, when I think about it, I would say most of the hacks on Glacier are pretty difficult on like Platinum. So yeah, you got to be careful. And of course, with the Glacier on Hazard, that is absolutely one of the most difficult maps in the game. It has like this blue, how to explain, like this blue energy ball that cycles around the map and drains your health and shields. And I mean, it can just wipe out your team if you're not paying attention to it, or if your shields are already down, your health is low, that thing can just it'll just finish you off real easily. So you absolutely have to pay attention to that. Okay, Firebase White. This is definitely one of the easiest maps in the game, and in my opinion, the easiest map to solo in the game. In fact, I think you'll see in two of my 3 gold solos that I've done. I think I've done, maybe I've only done 2. I can never remember. Anyway, it's definitely an easier map to solo on. So I'd say because it's small, and also because of the way that it's symmetrical, it's very easy to get cover, and it's very easy to cycle around on White. Definitely the section you're going to be in the most is the like the main room. That's how do you explain it? It's down the, is that down a ramp? Yeah, there is a ramp there. That's down the ramp from the middle section. That's at the tallest part of the map. Where so if like right in the middle of that middle section, there's an ammo crate, and that's one of the hack zones. And then you can go down the ramp, and there's also another ramp that's around the back side of it, and that goes into like that lower main room there, and that's where another hack zone is. And that's really where your team's going to be the most on White. And on White also has a hazard, and that is just like I think it's called Whiteout, and it's basically just like a kind of like a blizzard snowstorm type thing. And that's really not a problem. The only problem Like the only type of difficulty that brings is if you're playing with a Geth and you got hunter mode on. It makes it a little bit hard to see, and also if you're a Krogan and you have rage, after you do melees and you get rage going, and that can be a little bit difficult to see. And other than that, though, it's really not a problem. It's just completely aesthetic, so no big deal. Condor. Oh boy, Condor. So Condor, aka biggest pain in the ass in the game that no one ever wants to play. It's in my opinion the worst map in the game. No, there's a reason no one wants to ever play it, and kind of you can just hear a group sigh if it ever is random and lands on Condor. Condor is, I would say, the most asymmetrical map in the game and has the least amount of cover and like the worst cover in the game. There's really no cover in the game. It's really like everywhere you go, you're just kind of out in the open, and you're always vulnerable. It's like, if you don't have a really good team build, you can easily find yourself getting overwhelmed and just it can just be a major pain in the ass. And pardon my French, but a big clusterfuck. So, yeah. So Condor, you're probably going to be spending most of your time in the area that's all the way in the back of the map. So if you were to, there's like 2 entrances to get up there. It's like this kind of like a ramp area from the back. So there's like from the spawn point, if you go left and then all the way down, and then from where that crate is, you go straight further to the back of the map. That's where you go up like that ramp area, and that's usually a pretty good area to stay. And then there's like another, if you go further back to where the extraction area is, there's another ammo crate there, and that's that. I would say that not that specific area where you extract, but if you go up the ramp that's right near there, and there's also like a little staircase, that's also a pretty decent place to stay, and that's also where one of the hack zones are. The other main place is the other area that's kind of on that platform area, right when you are at the spawn point, and then you go straight. You go straight and like to the right instead of the left, which I described earlier. That's where like that raised up kind of enclosed platform area is. And that's also where another hack is. That's also a place that you'll usually find yourself. I would say either one of those places are pretty decent places to go. Like I said, there isn't really any great cover on Condor. It's really one of those maps that you just have to have some good teamwork going on to be able to shuffle around the map to wherever the most strategic spot is. It's just, you just gotta have a team build. Gotta have a good team build to survive there. Really is a pain. Hydra. This map is definitely one of the most. I think it's one of the most favorite maps in the game that I've seen, and I also like it a lot. Hydra is definitely a symmetrical map. It's I would say it's on the easier side, probably on the easier side, although it's definitely not as easy as something like Ghost or Giant or White. It's about in the middle towards the easier side, I guess. Another one of those maps that can definitely go wrong if your team doesn't have it together if you just don't want to spread out too far. That's really the thing with Hydra. Hydra, if you stay together and you go in like in the back area. So in the back area, there's from the spawn point. Basically, you just go. There's two ways of getting there. You either go straight, just straight across the map all the way to the back as far as you can go, where there's an ammo crate, or you go left from the spawn point and basically just keep going all the way to the back, where there's another ammo crate along the left side. Around that area, it's a long hallway, a big enclosed area that has a lot of cover. That's really where you're going to end up staying, pretty much the entire time when you're playing Hydra. Obviously, if you need to do objectives or whatever else, then it'll bring you out of there. But that's really where you want to stay. It's the most strategic location to fight from. And if you just have a good team build and you're just comboing, you can really you can make it really a piece of cake to win on Hydra. So that's really what's key. You just don't want to split up. I think that's really bad with Hydra. Jade. Jade is absolutely one of the hardest maps in the game. It's definitely while it is actually a symmetrical map, it doesn't have great cover. It's just one of those maps that is deceptively difficult, and the cover that's there isn't really any true cover in Jade, just because the way that it's set up, there's just multiple entrances and like window slots and things that you can always be getting hit from. So it's another one of those maps that is extremely essential for your team to stay together in order to be able to really just have your DPS at its highest capacity. It's also one of those maps that you can be going all game and doing great with your team, and then you'll just get one particular objective. Usually it's the 4-point objective, and have to do one of those in the middle of the map that has no cover at all whatsoever, and completely wipe out. Even if God, you could spend easily 4, 5, 6 metagels on just one of those points if it's in a really bad spot. So Jade is one of those maps that another one of those maps is just deceptively difficult, and you just really have to pay attention, because those enemies, they're just going to be getting you from locations that you're just not going to be expecting. So definitely pay attention. Goddess is another one. I actually get Goddess and Jade kind of mixed up sometimes. They're both difficult maps. I would say that Jade is probably harder, but Goddess is definitely not too far behind. And that's also because it's just one of those maps that doesn't have any real true cover anywhere. You absolutely have to stay together with your team. You really can't feel safe anywhere, because enemies, there's so many open locations and just entrances and things that enemies can come from. There's no real long hallways to use to your advantage. It's just one of those things where your best defense is a good offense, because there just isn't really any decent cover. So luckily with Goddess, it's not as bad with the objectives as Jade. This isn't one of those maps that really has any objectives, as far as I can recall, that really are ever too difficult. So that's not really the hard part about Goddess. It's really just surviving in general. It's just one of those maps that you can easily get split up in from your teammates, because there's a lot of rooms that are around each other that are kind of separate from each other. So you can easily have all 4 players on your team being, kind of close to each other, but actually basically in different areas. And it's just far enough that if there are a lot of enemies around, or depending on what kind of enemies they are, like phantoms or something, that if an enemy goes, one of your teammates goes down, you can just, that domino effect occurs. You get one guy going down and another guy tries to revive him, and then he goes down, and then the other two guys come and it's just all downhill from there. So it's one of those maps that, like I said, you really have to stay together and have good team play and just be together as a unit, and that's really the best strategy for Goddess. Rio is another one that's a pretty difficult map. It's rather medium-sized to large. Obviously not as big as something like Vancouver or London, but it does have a lot going on there. You have where you spawn in the middle. Of course, that's like kind of like that middle section with the big platform area, and then that extends out in both directions. And in the one direction that's toward the extraction zone, you have more of that like lower platform area with a bunch of the pillars in the back and things like that. And of course, on the opposite end from the spawn point, you have the platform going down and then extending all the way back to the back sections. Then of course you have the area known as basically the box of shame. Basically it's that box in the very back of Rio where there's the ammo crate in there, and you can fit all of your teammates in there, and enemies can't get in there, so you're invulnerable to being sync killed. And this is of course where players go if things really go to shit and you need to survive. It's one of the ways that you can exploit the game. Don't really see it being used too much, but I do remember in my early days of gold and platinum seeing people use it. But hey, I mean, it's a legitimate strategy, right? Just like using the ramps to not get sync killed. So, Rio's definitely, I would say, on the harder side of the maps. Definitely going to be spending most of your time either in the middle area around the spawn point, most likely on the side that's leading out more towards the ramp, the ramp that's going down towards the box of shame area, and possibly in the back area around like the box of shame. Most likely, I don't really see too many teams hanging out on the opposite side near the extraction point. Really, because the other areas that I just mentioned have much better cover. Rio overall is a pretty symmetrical map, so it's really not too bad as far as not having too much cover. And it's just one of those things that it really comes down to the objectives. When you have objectives that make you go out of cover and go into areas that are make you a lot more vulnerable, it really comes down to your team giving you solid cover. And kind of like Jade, although I don't think Rio's as difficult as Jade. Having getting one bad objective area, like having one of the 4-point objectives, and that putting that right in the middle of the map, that can make or break a team that isn't already doing well. So yeah, you just got to be aware of that. Rio has a lot of ammo crates around, so that's definitely one of the pros of Rio. And also, if you're playing with a jug, since it's pretty long map, and most of the time, like I said, you're going to be spending your time in the back on the opposite end of the extraction zone. Make sure that you leave early enough if you're a jug, so that you get to the extraction zone in time. That's something that you have to time out pretty well. All right, moving forward here to Vancouver. Vancouver is either the biggest map in the game or the second biggest map in the game. I'm not sure if it's bigger than London or not. Vancouver is one of those maps that I would say it's definitely on the medium side of difficulty, since it has, due to its size and decent cover, long hallways, things like that. It's really not too bad to be able to survive and use cover, and even if you don't have the best team build, if you just have a guy with a good sniper on your team, or just some decent comboing going on, you can survive pretty well on Vancouver. Once again, it's just one of those maps that if you have to leave cover, and you're most likely going to be in the top section the entire time, except for when you need to do objectives. So that's like the top section. If you go up either, if you go up the ramps on either side of the map, that will take you up to all the way to the back, where it's kind of like an office area that's enclosed. That's basically around that area, and is where you're gonna be doing most of your fighting from, because that gives you basically a height advantage, and it's just strategically sound area to fight from. One thing definitely to keep in mind is if you're playing with a Volus, there are certain sections on Vancouver. So basically, if you go up the ladder or the ramp, that if you from the spawn point, if you go to the left, and then keep on going around that area up to the top, there's a hack in that area, and also some 4-point objective points there that if you are a Volus, you're not going to be able to get to, because there are you're not going to be able to get to climb on top, because Voluses can't do that. Same thing with Jugs and the Krogan Warlord. Those characters are unable to climb up on top of objects, you need to make sure that obviously there's someone on your team who's going to be able to get to each of those objectives, and that won't be a problem. Of course, if you're playing random, then it is what it is, but that's just something to keep in mind. Overall, I would say Vancouver is definitely, I think, one of the most fun maps in the game. Yeah, I think that's about it. Moving on here, London, definitely on one of the hardest maps in the game, and the second biggest or largest map in the game. Depending on your team build, London can be either absolute misery or it can be a breeze. Also, if your team stays together, and most likely the one place you're going to stay for the massive majority of playing London is going to be in that ramp, up the ramp to the left side. When you spawn, you're going to go straight forward, then you make a left, and you're going to go up to that area, and then there's like a ledge, like an overhanging ledge that's in the middle of the map on the left side, and it's kind of like with like a skywalk type of thing with like windows, and on each side there's a ramp going down, and so that's really where you're going to be spending most of your time, just because once again, it's using long hallways to give you really good cover, and it has a lot of solid cover, so it's really not hard to stay alive on London. Once again, it's just one of those maps that if you get an objective that makes your team go out in a place in the map that makes you vulnerable, that doesn't have great cover, then you can very easily just get really smashed with losing meta gels, having to revive people, getting caught in that vicious vicious cycle of people going down and using up all your gear. So, you know, once again, it's you want to make sure that you have. It's usually good to have at least one person who's going to stay alive. You know, someone who's either going to be an infiltrator or someone who is a tank, just in case that happens. You also just want to basically just, you know, guard each of those entrances up to the catwalk area, and you'll be fine. It can get a little bit hairy when you have to leave that area, especially, you know, when it's on platinum. So having good long range weapons, you know, characters with assault rifles or sniper rifles can certainly help with that a lot. And of course, you can never go wrong playing with infiltrators. All right, moving on to the hazards here. I already talked about a bunch of these hazards, so I'm not going to really spend too much time with them. Of course, Glacier, like I said earlier, you can see in the picture here, has like this blue energy ball that goes around and sucks away your health and shields. So just like regular Glacier, you know, you just got to make sure that your team stays together. Use your tank if necessary. Use the ramps so you don't get sync killed, and you know, watch out for that damn thing because it can be vicious if your team is already struggling. Dagger, this is just like I said, it's kind of like the dust storm type of area. It's really not too bad on visibility. You know, it's really not that big of a deal. With the reactor, of course, this is just the regular reactor. Doesn't have a working reactor where you can push the button and have it, you know, the reactor do the incineration shit. Of course, on this one you can. So we just make sure you don't incinerate your opponents. That you do want to incinerate your opponents, just not your teammates. Ghost, this has the acid rain, and this is one of the two. The other one, of course, being Glacier, where the hazard level it makes a drastic change in the gameplay, how difficult it is on this map. So once again, the acid rain on this level drains away your shields, not your health though. So make sure you stay indoors when it's raining, or just stay in the areas where even when you're outside of those indoor areas, the rain isn't going to hit you because it's being blocked above by, you know, a ceiling. Giant, this is it's just dark. It's really not. It doesn't really affect any characters in any way. It's really not a big deal. White, so this is the last one. This is the only. It only is just like whiteout, so it's a little bit harder to see. That's all it is. It's only really a problem for Geth with Hunter mode, and like Krogan when they're in Rage mode. Just a little bit hard to see, so that's all you got to worry about with those. And that's the end of the map, so let's move on here to enemies. Of course, with this first one, that's if you want to play random enemies. I'll just go in order of these. With Cerberus, I would say that they are probably the second easiest of the four enemies, the four races that you can play against. The second easiest. The first easiest being the Reapers. Main thing you have to worry about with Cerberus is the turrets that the engineers put down. Make sure that engineers always have to be a top priority target, because those turrets can just tear your team apart. The RPM on those turrets are so ridiculous. I mean, they can take a full Krogan or Jug down in a matter of seconds. It's really absurd. So yeah, turrets are really something you have to be aware of. And you know, if you're using voice chat, make sure to call those out if you can, if it's necessary. And you know, just make sure to take out those engineers, because keep in mind they can also they can restore the shields on turrets and atlases if they're alive around those components. So make sure that you just take out those engineers immediately when you see them. And also, since they have the turrets on their backs, if you shoot the turrets, those things blow up and they'll stagger you. So make sure that that can be sometimes a difference between life and death. If you get staggered like that and you're already down and there's other enemies around you, that can bring you down. So make sure that you avoid that. The dragoons are another thing. They're one of the fastest enemies in the game. They're not really too bad when they're by themselves, but if there's a couple of them, which a lot of times in platinum is in the extraction round, they usually send a whole bunch of them at you at once. So that can be pretty dangerous, because it just really adds on pressure if you don't have high DPS. It's a lot easier to deal with them if you have like a Rieger or something. But if you're just playing a typical kit that's pretty squishy, they can be a real problem for you. With their like electric whip type of move. Well, it's like smash basically. They can stagger you and then shoot you with their hornet. So I think it's a hornet they're carrying. So you got to make sure that you got to watch out for that, and you can do that by dodging, and that's one of those moves that can really be a problem. I would say with the Nemesis, and of course that's like the sniper character here. Of course they just have raptors, and it's kind of funny that they have raptors, because those guns are such pieces of shit. But for them, they can bring down your shield in one shot. So if you get hit by a Nemesis and then man, just like a Guardian rolls around, or a Dragoon, or even engineers, they can just take you down with basically one shot if the Nemesis takes down your shield. So they can be nasty. They're really not something you have to worry about too much, and same thing with the Centurions and the Assault Troopers. They're really not too dangerous of enemies. But they are another type of enemy that can be really pesky, that you want to take out quickly. Of course, with the Guardians here, you really just want to shoot them through the mail slot, and if you have a sniper that has armor piercing, you can shoot right through their shield, regardless of the mail slot. So if you're a sniper, you want to help out your team and take out those Guardians immediately. Really the last ones are Phantoms and Atlases. Phantoms are by far the most difficult enemy to fight in the game, I would say. They're the ones that will get the bulk of sync kills overall. It's pretty rare for the other ones. Banshees, when people are still kind of beginners to the game, Banshees will get a lot of sync kills, but for the most part, Phantoms, once you're in gold and platinum, are going to be getting basically all the sync kills in the game. And the thing is, the sync kill mechanic in the game is really kind of buggy and really a pain in the ass. In my opinion, it's one of the I think it's not a bad idea, because it's nice that it makes the game definitely a lot harder. It makes enemies who can sync kill a lot more dangerous. But overall, the way that it was implemented is really cheap, and it's like the radius in which an enemy can sync kill you is really kind of like hit or miss. And there'll be times when you're just like around a Phantom and you're like, you really should have gotten sync killed, but you don't. And there's other times when there is no way in hell you should have gotten sync killed, but you do. And there's even times when it gets so bugged out that you'll literally be feet away from them, but it will make the move, the animation move happen, and you'll literally like your character will literally like warp back a couple feet just to get sync killed, and it's just infuriating because it's so broken. That's one of my my pet peeves in multiplayer is the sync kill mechanic. Once again, not because of the difficulty. I like that it makes it hard and makes bosses more dangerous, but it's just the way that it's done is really kind of dumb. So yeah, you gotta watch out for phantoms. They're the kind of enemy that, when they're on the field, they're definitely something they're definitely something you want to call out to your team, just like the turrets, because they are an immediate threat. And you get one of those phantoms and no one's paying attention, they'll just sneak up around you, and man, they can easily take out half your team real quickly. And especially if there's more than one of them, they're like wasps. You just really gotta swat them away as soon as possible. So great way to do that, of course, if you have a character with something like overload, you can take down their shields. Of course, you can do power combos on them. However, they do have like their biotic bubble thing when they're in that pose. You can't do any power moves on them. So you just gotta watch for their patterns and learn their rhythm, and you'll get sync killed a lot less once you do that. It just takes some trial and error. You're probably gonna get killed a lot, but eventually, you just gotta man up and take them head on and not be afraid of them, and just once again learn their patterns and just hit them hard. Especially if you got something like a Reactor, they're really not going to be able to defend themselves against you. You just got to overpower them. And otherwise, just be smart. Wait for them to be vulnerable, and then do your power combo on them or whatever. Lastly, with Cerberus is the Atlases, and the Atlases. That's another thing that kind of pisses me off in this game is with the Atlases. The way that the range that they have with their guns is kind of doesn't make sense a lot of times. Like, you can be behind cover and they'll just be shooting their like typical cannon, not like the rocket, but they're like typical just like cannon shot, and sometimes that will just take down your shields and you're just like completely out of range for what should really be practical. So you just got to really pay attention to that. They can hit you because of course when they're doing like their cannon thing, they can be really far away and you won't even see it hit you. You'll just hear it and bam, your shields are down, and what are you gonna do? So as far as I know, there isn't really any particular sweet spot for hitting Atlases. I think I've heard before that the round turbine that's kind of like I think it's like blackish reddish or orange or something like that on their backs is a weak spot, but I don't know. I haven't really seen that there's any particular spot on an Atlas that does more damage than any other, since they don't have like really a head. You can't get headshots with them. So yeah, that's just the main thing to worry about with Atlases. You're very, very rarely ever going to get sync killed by an Atlas. You really got to get unlucky for the most part to get sync killed by an Atlas, and most likely that will be because you're using something like a Krogan Warlord and you're doing your melees and you're really up close and being risky, and sometimes it will just activate that sync kill and you're probably gonna be yelling. So you just gotta watch out for that. All right, so next up here is Geth, and it's funny with the Geth. Until you really get really intimate with the game and you really understand the differences between the enemies, and that really comes when you get to Golden Plat. The Geth really aren't that big of a deal because first off, they can't do any sync kills on you. Secondly, they're relatively slow moving. But where the Geth are really dangerous is the way that the Prime can stagger you. And with the other units, they are really stealthy. So they don't make noise. They move slow, so they sneak up on you. and they do a lot of damage, and they can do it very quickly. So if the collectors, for example, are basically kind of like, like Zerg, if you're familiar with like StarCraft, they're just basically complete chaos, and they just move really fast, and they just overwhelm you, and they just can be just absolutely all over the place. The Geth are the absolute opposite. I would say that the Geth are just the epitome of order, and they're just kind of like really sneaky about cornering you, about boxing you into a corner so that they can just dominate you, and basically stagger you with the prime, and then sneak in, take down your shields with something like the rocket trooper, and then hit you, and then really hit you hard with a pyro, and then of course the something like the Geth bomber, or even the prime's turret can be really dangerous in just finishing you off. I can't tell you how many times I've just be playing against the Geth, and or on platinum, they're intermixed. Your shields will go down, you think you're safe, and then you'll just get hit by a Geth turret that you never saw, and it'll take you down, and you're just like, oh my god. They're a real pain in the ass, and you have to watch out for them, because they will just strategically deploy those turrets in places that you wouldn't normally see, because they'll put them behind you and everything. So you really have to be on your toes with the Geth. They are really just masters of deception. They creep, like I said, they creep up on you. They use invisibility. They don't make a lot of noise. They are just really really difficult. And in my opinion, I think that on gold that the collectors are the most difficult, but I think on platinum the Geth are the most difficult. And because you just can't underestimate how much trouble getting staggered costs you. I mean, getting staggered by a prime is just like it may as well just be death, because once you get staggered and there's other enemies around, really just that second of being staggered is so much in multiplayer. It really just takes you, just being vulnerable for just that short amount of time can mean death. So you really got to make sure that you're smart, you're checking your corners and everything, when you're playing against the Geth, because they can really take you by surprise. Okay, so the Reapers. The Reapers are, in my opinion, by far the easiest enemy to play in the game. The only real threats that the Reapers pose are with the Ravagers, for the most part, and the other thing is to watch out for is the Marauders have a really deadly melee. So if you get up close to a Marauder and they melee you, they'll stagger you, and then they'll shoot you. And that's a very easy way to die if you're playing with a squishy kit. So you definitely got to watch out for that. Ravagers, of course, they'll shoot you from afar, and they can even burst through, like the N7 Paladin's shield, for example. Their shots can do damage through that. It dissipates a little bit, it absorbs, the shield absorbs a little bit of the Ravager's damage, but it can still kill you. So you got to watch out for that. Those are some seriously deadly projectiles, and the AI is really good at positioning Ravagers in positions that will shoot you from very far distances and take you by surprise. So that's really the most dangerous part about the Reapers. Is really just the Ravagers. The Banshees, in the beginning when you're playing, the Banshees may seem really difficult because obviously they move really fast and they can go through walls, and they're the Banshees like biotic balls that they throw at you. Those obviously do a lot of damage, and if they hit you, they can easily kill you or take down your shield, or drain your drain your health and shields really, really badly. But once you learn the Banshee's patterns, they're really not a problem. I prefer fighting a Banshee absolutely more than fighting a Phantom, or fighting, really, to be honest, really fighting any of the other major bosses. And of course there's brutes too, and brutes really aren't a problem. They're another one that, just like the Banshees, they have such accentuated patterns that you can really just completely learn their patterns and just dominate them, because they're absolutely predictable. They work in the same way every single time. Every now and then, with a brute, he'll go a little bit further with his like lunge attack than you expected, and maybe he'll hit you and you'll get staggered, or Banshee will go through a wall that you weren't expecting, but you'll learn about that as you go and get used to it, and eventually they really won't be problems for you at all. Let's see. I think the one last thing with the Reapers is with the brutes. You just gotta watch out when they die. There is a short amount of time that they can still do damage to you. So if even when they're falling, they're doing their animation when they're dying. They're still going to be dangerous. So if you run into their bodies, they are still going to do some damage to you, and they're going to stagger you. So you got to make sure that when you take down a brute, you get the hell out of the way, or you're going to get staggered, and that can definitely mean death. Like I said, getting staggered is very, very bad. So you definitely don't want that to happen. All right, so the last one here is the collectors, and the collectors, I would say for beginners are definitely the hardest to play against. They move extremely fast, definitely the fastest in the game. They can be very chaotic, and of course they have a lot of explosive properties going on. So with their abominations, of course, and like their possessed abominations and their regular abominations, when they explode, if they're close to you, they can stagger you and do damage to you. And of course, if it's the possessed abomination, then those will excuse me, they'll do big explosions that can even just kill you instantly, even if you're a larger a tankier unit such as like a Jug or a Krogan. So you really got to make sure that when you see a possessed abomination running towards your team, that you do not kill them if they're next to one of your opponents, unless you obviously have to. Or it's okay if you do it and you go revive your teammate immediately. Sometimes it's unavoidable. For the most part, if it can be avoided, you should just wait, let them run around, let your teammates clear the area, and then take them down so that they explode and no one gets hurt. That's definitely something that is a major thing. Like if you're not conscious of that and you're constantly killing abominations and bringing down your team, that's a real problem. That's just really not cool. It's bad form. So you want to make sure you're conscious of that. And it's the same for regular abominations too. And then of course you got your collector captains. The regular collectors really, just the standard troop is not too dangerous, but the collector captain, they can be pretty dangerous since they have their barriers, and they do a pretty good amount of damage. But just like any other second level type enemy, like a Marauder or a Centurion, you just got to make sure that you take down their shields, and then you can do a combo on them or whatever you need to do. Then of course you have your Scions and your Praetorians. The Scions, of course, can do two types of attacks. They can shoot the how would you put it, like their kind of like their laser cannon thing. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but they do like three shots in a row, and they have a pretty predictable pattern. So those can take down your shields. If you're playing a squishy kit, those can take down your shields in one shot, and those can be really dangerous. So just make sure you're paying attention when they're doing their three shots, and just wait for the three shots to clear, and then you can shoot them. And of course, then they also have their like their bombs that they do, like their little like pellet bombs that they shoot out. Very similarly to the Geth bomber. Those are also really dangerous, and of course, you just got to roll out of the way or whatever you got to do to avoid them, because getting caught in those bombs can definitely mean you're probably gonna die if you get caught in those. So you definitely gotta be aware of that, and they're definitely a high priority target. And then you got the Praetorians, of course, and Praetorians are, in my opinion, not really counting Phantoms, because they're a lot different than every other boss enemy, because they're so much smaller and faster and everything. Every other boss enemy is kind of like like a big behemoth type of enemy. I would say that the Scions are, in my opinion, the most dangerous out of the large bosses, since they have both the laser beam attack, which can go a large distance and sometimes even go through cover, or if you're not like taking hard cover, they can get you. And really those can take down a whole team easily. They're so dangerous. And then they have like their how do you describe those? Like their flare, they're like kind of like laser flare shots that they do, that shoots in like like a flurry of explosives at you. Those can be dangerous too. They're definitely a lot easier to dodge than their laser beam attack. But those are definitely something you gotta watch out for too. Furthermore, they can be very stealthy. There's been a couple times that I have not been paying good of attention, watching my back as I should, and those Praetorians, when they're floating around, they don't make any noise. So they can very easily just float around, come right behind you, and sync kill you. And that's a real pain. That's scary. So you definitely, when there's a Praetorian on the field, you want to know where they're at all times, and make sure that they're a high priority target and you take them down. You also want to make sure that when the Praetorians are floating around, they have like their bubble shield up, and you can't do any biotic moves on them, and the Banshees have that too, as well as Phantoms. So just make sure that when that's activated, you don't waste your time, waste your cooldown with your powers, throwing powers at them, and just use your guns. I guess the last thing is the Seeker Swarms, and then the I think they're called like Seeker Scourge. So those are the ones that have like the barriers. Those can also be really dangerous, because when they explode on you, of course they block your powers for a couple seconds. So those are another thing that with the collectors, you really want to make sure that you avoid those or take them down immediately when the Seeker Swarms or Seeker Scourges are coming at you. And they can also blow up on you. The Seeker Scourges. The Swarms don't really blow up. I don't think they do any damage when they blow up on you. They just block your powers. But a simple combination of just getting hit by a Seeker Swarm and blocking your powers, and then just facing like a Collector Captain, and that's a pretty deadly threat right there. So the Collectors, of course, they move really fast, and you just really gotta be fast on your feet, faster than them, thinking ahead, and that's how you beat them. And of course, being smart and conscious of where the abominations and possessed abominations are on the field, so that you don't blow them up on your teammates. Can't stress that enough, because that can create the domino effect. And something I mentioned earlier, the domino effect is quickest way to get to wipe out in a game is to do an action like blowing up an abomination on your teammate. He goes down, then your teammate rushes over to help him out. He goes down, you go over, you go down, and then suddenly you got one guy left, and against the Collectors, he's probably not going to make it. So you really just got to be careful about that. Okay, so that's all for enemies, and So lastly now, let's talk about the different challenges or difficulty modes. It's kind of confusing calling them challenges since there's the other type of challenges. So I'm just going to refer to them as like the challenge level, or sorry, the difficulty levels here. So of course you got bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, with of course bronze being the easiest and platinum being the most difficult. With bronze and silver, I would say those of course are the first two that you're going to be playing as, and even if you've played the campaign and you do know the game, multiplayer is different enough from single player that you really do want to start out in bronze. You can move up to silver pretty quickly, but I definitely suggest starting out with bronze first, just because you'll be able to win very easily, and you'll be able to just start accumulating gear and XP and everything, which is what you absolutely need to do. You just have to grind in the beginning. That's just the way the game is, to unlock better gear and everything. So don't think you're holier than thou and can skip the easier levels. You see, oh, it's so annoying. I see people all the time in platinum. They come in there with nothing to offer the team whatsoever. They're like, it's like they just bought the game and just they just got into multiplayer that same day and are trying to play platinum. And it's like, I don't care if you're the best player ever. If you're gonna go into platinum and try to play with the regular weapons and with no gear and not even like full metagel slots and everything, what do you expect to achieve in platinum? I mean, you're just gonna get your ass kicked. You're gonna bring your team down. You're gonna be dead weight. And honestly, you're not gonna have fun. So just don't make sure that they have the tiered difficulty levels for a reason. Definitely, I suggest using them. If you're already pretty good at the game, it's okay to move up pretty fast. But I do suggest spending a lot of time in silver. You don't necessarily need to spend a lot of time in bronze, but spend a lot of time in silver. And I would say move up to gold once you can solo silver. This is just like a rule of thumb. You don't absolutely have to do this, but basically move up to the next difficulty level once you can solo that particular one. I would say the one exception is moving up from bronze to silver. You don't need to be able to solo bronze, move up to silver. But there is enough of a gap between silver and gold and platinum that, in my opinion, it is essential if you really want to play it right, to do well, and not just be kind of like a ride the coattails of other players. If you really actually want to bring something to the table, I would suggest don't get into gold until you can solo silver, or at least consistently score very high in silver and survive very well. Like, you just know if you've mastered it or not. And then with gold moving up to platinum, there is enough difference from gold and platinum that I definitely suggest being able to solo gold, or once again, at least be able to score very high. Or if you're going to move up to platinum, make sure you play with a kit that you can survive with very well. So even if you don't get a lot of points, you really should be playing with a kit that you're really good with. It's like, yeah, and that is also a level 20. Do not go into platinum with less than a level 20 unless you clearly can handle yourself and you have the stats to show it. And it's not just your N7 score and your challenge score, but your manifest. If I'm in a lobby and I see a guy come in to platinum and he has a low N7 score and challenge score, really I don't care so much about N7 score if it's basically like 120 or above, then I don't really care about the N7 score. If it's lower than that, then maybe that will be questionable to me. But with challenge score is much more important, because challenge score is a direct correlation to really how much you've played the game. And so if you have a high challenge score and low N7 score, that usually means that all that you did was you just stopped leveling up you just stop promoting your characters, and that doesn't mean anything. But if you have a high challenge score, then that means that you've legitimately played the game a whole lot and have probably done a lot of the harder stuff. So that's a good signal. And then of course, like I said, your manifest. Even if you have relatively low N7 score and challenge score, if you have a really good manifest, in other words, you have leveled up gear, level 10 weapons and level 4 ammo types and other high level gear, then that's a much better indicator. And of course, just a build that makes sense for your kit. That's a much better indicator of a player's competence than the other stuff. So those are things that players look for, and if you don't meet those requirements and you get booted out of the game, that's probably why. Don't take it personally. It's just the host is probably doing you a favor because you probably don't belong in that difficulty level. So like I said, really the main difference is there isn't really too much of a difference between bronze and silver, except for there's the enemies do more damage and take more damage. Moving up from silver to bronze, it's really the same thing, but it's a much more drastic step. Gold is a lot harder than silver. In my opinion, it's the biggest jump in the game from silver to gold. So you need to make sure to be prepared. When you jump from silver to gold, it's going to be a bit of a shock if you're not really prepared, because it is a lot different. It's a much more intense game. You really gotta, that's when you start getting to the real, you gotta be more of a pro to play gold. So just be aware of that. And then of course platinum. Platinum has mixed races in the waves. So and also early on, like in the first wave, you're gonna get bosses immediately, whereas in the other difficulty levels that doesn't happen. So moving up to platinum is definitely something that, let's face it, guys. Platinum is the ultimate challenge in Mass Effect. It is the hardest thing in the game. Don't take it lightly. It's as simple as that. I think that there's people who simply just underestimated it, and it's difficult. Platinum is not easy. It's something that you really have to put time into to be able to handle, and unless you are you're really playing with a good team who are just going to let you ride their coattails. So it's one of those things that make sure you are sufficiently prepared if you're going to move up to gold and platinum. Like I said, if you can solo, that's really great. That soloing is the best way really to prepare for gold and platinum, because it will really teach you the game. And I will do a whole video on soloing later on. But just keep that in mind, and don't make it too hard on yourself. Don't move up too fast, and you'll be fine. Okay. So that's going to wrap up this video. Hope you found that helpful. I know that ran pretty long. Seems to be the trend these days for me. So in the next video, we're going to move back into actually playing the game and get into some advanced gameplay tactics. So doing things like explaining right-hand advantage and doing stuff with cover and what else is there? Doing grabs, and these aren't like, when I talk about advanced gameplay, it's not like these are really that advanced or anything. It's just something that's a little bit beyond the regular stuff. So there's a bunch of other things in there that I want to cover. So look forward to that. I'll have that out pretty soon, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. capnbozzy out.